In case you needed one, I've got another depressing way of looking at the standings. The Flyers are in town, so I want to talk John Tortorella, and maybe an upcoming star goalie is about to make his debut in Buffalo tonight. All ahead here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making today Locked On Sabres your first listen, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Odyssey app. You can check out our video show on YouTube as well. Sticky Joe DiBiase here. And of course, if you want to text with me during the game, get some updates as well, you can hit up our text line. If you're not already a member, you can sign up by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres and then fire us some text. The Sabres and Flyers, 7 o'clock puck drop at KeyBank Center on Friday. Only 2 home games left, the second to last home game of the season, and there is no chance at the Sabres making a playoff push. If they were to win tonight, according to Money Puck, the Sabres would go to a 1.3% chance at making the playoffs. They would go up from 0.7 to 1.3. So good luck with that. It's not likely to happen in any way. I saw if they were to go 6-0 from here on, they'd have like a 40% chance of making the playoffs. 6-0, by the way, for a team that has not gone on a longer than 3-game win streak all season long. We will preview tonight's game, including the NHL debut of Ivan Fedotov, the potential star goalie that is in Philadelphia after a long career in the KHL. He's not that old. He's 27 years old. Big guy, 6'8" goaltender. There's going to be a Russian monster in net for the Flyers tonight. He has played 1 game in relief of Samuel Ersson. This, though, will be his first start in the National Hockey League here in Buffalo. We'll get into him a little bit more because he's a very interesting situation, let alone player, that the Flyers will have between the pipes tonight. And they've had a long history of not finding goaltenders. And they finally maybe thought they had one in Carter Hart, and then he started to fall down in terms of his play. And now, of course, he's the subject of a sexual assault lawsuit that's going on in London, Ontario, and he might go to jail. So Carter Hart's gone. This is maybe the next Flyer goaltender that they're going to give a big contract to. More about him a little bit later on when we preview tonight's game. But we'll get to John Tortorella as well. We spoke on him a little bit earlier in the week. I had a texter reach out asking about Tortorella for the Sabres. I want to dive into that a little bit more because I do think he could be on the way out in Philadelphia. So all of that is ahead, of course, here on the show. Before we get to any of that, though, I do just kind of want to take a minute and look at the standings and a realization that I had this morning on just how big of an opportunity the Sabres look to have blown here. This Eastern Conference playoff race, I saw a good meme the other day where one side of the meme was the NHL Shield saying, hey, one of you got to make the playoffs. And the other side was like 6 logos of Eastern Conference teams. No one wants to make it. Nobody wants to do it. And if you look at the standings right now, the Flyers at 83 points are in the 3rd Metro spot. They really need a win against the Sabres tonight. The Islanders are at 83 points, tied with Philly in the 2nd wildcard position. Washington is at 82 points. Detroit at 82 points. Pittsburgh at 81. And, of course, the Sabres then at 77, which is not quite in the race. New Jersey, by the way, at 76. They've lost 3 in a row. A continuation of my being correct that their problem was not Lindy Ruff, and they have been bad since they fired Lindy Ruff. No surprise, because it was always the goaltending, and that wasn't Lindy's fault. Anyways, enough on that. If you look at these teams, nobody wants to make a run. And I said this about a month ago, that I just don't trust any of these teams to grab hold of a spot and run with it. None of them have the talent level. None of them are consistent enough. None of them, other than the Islanders, I would have said, had a goalie that I thought could will them into a spot. Nobody has the chops to do it. And that's exactly what's happened. And this is why it's a blown opportunity for me for the Sabres. They are just as capable of any of these teams on going on a run and catching them. But they didn't take advantage. They had their shot. Had they had 3 more points, and we're going into this game with 80 points, I mean, this would be an important game with a shot to get in. But they had opportunities, slipped past them. We could Winnipeg having a lead in the third period. There's a bunch of games that we could point to that you could find 3 more points. But the Flyers are half of the point here for me. Philadelphia is in a playoff spot, 83 points in 76 games. The Islanders are in a playoff spot, 83 points in 76 games. Those two teams are in playoff spots and are on pace for 89 points. There has not been a single team to make the Eastern Conference playoffs in the NHL with lower than 90 points, sub 90 points, in 14 years. It has been more than a decade since a team with 89 or fewer points got into the Eastern Conference postseason. And there are 2 right now that are in the playoff picture that are on pace for that. This was the chance, the best chance they've maybe had in terms of what's around them to break the drought. There has never been a single season during the Sabres playoff drought where the bar to clear was lower. There have been years where 98 points is what it took to get into the playoffs. There have been years where I think actually even the first year out of the COVID shutdown, it was in the 2021-22 season, the bar to get in was 100. 100. You had to get to triple digits to get into the playoffs. And this year it's at 89. What a missed opportunity to break the drought. Even if you weren't going to be an actually good team, just a team that squeaked in that everybody expects to get trounced the moment they go to the playoffs, which is what everybody expects, by the way, from Philadelphia, the Islanders, the Capitals, the Red Wings, whichever of the 2 teams end up getting in. Nobody's going to expect them to do anything. But who right now would be happier with making the playoffs and knowing you're not going to do anything when you get there? Buffalo. Buffalo would. Maybe Detroit, too, on some level. They got a 7-year drought of their own going. But Buffalo, the Flyers, do they care? They're all mad. We'll get to them. Tortorella is furious every single night. They're not happy with this season. The Islanders. I don't know what it's like to be an Islander fan. I mean, it's got to be frustrating because this is what your season's all about. Every single year is just squeaking in the playoffs year after year after year after year, and no one ever thinks you're going to do anything, and you never do anything once you get to the postseason. Washington, they don't care. They have their cup. They're on the tail end of a 15-year run of success, and all they care about or should care about is the Ovechkin record, chasing down Gretzky. They don't care. Pittsburgh, they're mad too. If they squeak in, they're not going to change anything. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, they're all at the end. So it would be Buffalo that would care the most, and they're the team that is the furthest out right now of the group that we've talked about here. So total missed opportunity. That's the negative way of framing it. If I were to look at the positive end of things, I'll try to spin it in a way where you're not wanting to bang your head against the wall. If you look at the current state of the Eastern Conference, and maybe we'll talk a lot about this during the offseason, there are only 6 good teams in the Eastern Conference. The Rangers, the Bruins, the Hurricanes, the Panthers, the Maple Leafs, and the Lightning. That's it. 6 teams out of 16. So, what's going to change on that front? Are any teams going to jump up there? Look at the list of teams that we just ran through that are currently in a playoff race. And how many of them are capable of the type of jump that it would require to join that top 6. Can you be as good as the Lightning? Can you be as good as the Maple Leafs? Can you be as good as the Hurricanes, the Panthers, the Bruins? Washington's not doing it. They're old. They're over the hill. Same goes, in my opinion, for Philadelphia, in large part. Same goes for Pittsburgh. These teams are not jumping up like that. They are at the end, not at the beginning. They are not trending up. Did I mention the Islanders? Islanders, Capitals, Penguins, Flyers. None of those teams are going to make a leap like that. So who's capable of the leap to jump into the top 6, or it would become a top 7, I guess, or top 8? The Sabres are one of those teams. The bar to clear shouldn't be much higher next season. The only teams you have to be worried about are Ottawa, New Jersey, Detroit. That's it. That's a couple. The Sabres are in that group, though. To me, those are the 4 teams that are all going to be competing for 2 spots next year. Well, I shouldn't say that. Competing to take the leap into that, the legitimate category of a good team. Everyone else is on the way down. And maybe Tampa could take a step back and there's another spot available. So the positive way of looking at it would be the bar's very low this year. And I don't know that that's going to change. I think the bar might be pretty low again next year because the East is very top heavy right now, and there are a lot of middling and bad teams around the Eastern Conference. The Flyers are one of them. They're in town tonight, 7 o'clock puck drop, and John Tortorella is about to have an aneurysm. We'll talk about Tortorella, not just for Philly. What about for Buffalo? Just throwing it out there. There was a conversation from Jeff Merrick and Greg Wyshynski this week about Tortorella and the Sabres. We'll get to it when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscriptions, fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA, available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. It's a registered broker-dealer. Back here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. First listen every day. If you're looking for a change up on your next listen and you're tired of all the yelling and screaming on Fox Sports or ESPN, turn down the volume of all the shouting and check out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel. It's available on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. And I'm sure they'll get some more digs takes in along the way. You got the college tournament, hoops, of course, for both the men's and women's returning to action tonight. Sabres and Flyers, 7 o'clock puck drop. The Sabres are favored in this game. I got my parlay later on. I got to hit one before the end of the year. I'm feeling good, feeling lucky. We're due for tonight's one. John Tortorella is losing his mind in Philadelphia. He is losing it. He last week just crushed the players in the media about how they weren't trying in the second period of a game and how they're starting to lose themselves, and he was benching Sean Couturier, their captain, and now he's away from the team with what they're calling an injury, but it's kind of out of nowhere, so he will not play against the Sabres tonight, by the way. So he kind of ostracized the captain, which some fans like, right? Like a coach that's willing to do something like that, but why don't a lot of coaches do that? Why didn't Don Granato bench Kyle Okposo? Why is that so rare? Because of what's happening in Philadelphia right now. Tortorella benched the captain, and the players hate him now, and they're not listening to him. They're quitting on him, and he's maybe lost the team. So just keep that in mind. I'm someone that likes to point that out, too. I'm someone that does want everybody to be treated fairly, and in a vacuum, hey, Kyle Okposo is not performing well. He deserves to be benched. If he's actively hurting you in the lineup, he deserves to be benched. But just keep that in the back of your minds, because Tortorella is the one guy that is willing to do something like that. He did it with Sean Couturier, and he may have lost the locker room, and they might now miss the playoffs because everything is going so poorly. So Tortorella, he is as old school as it gets. He is fun to listen to sometimes. He's definitely grumpy. He's got a style to himself. He's not a player's coach by any means, and there's very few like him left in the NHL. I think he's going to get fired in Philadelphia. I don't see them making the playoffs. I think the way they're playing as of late, they are losing themselves. They are not a very talented team. They might get a little spark here in net, But that better save them, because otherwise, I mean, 2 wins in your last 10 and you haven't played well at all. The best thing for them is that nobody behind them is very good. But I think Philly might miss the playoffs, and I think if they do, then he's definitely out of there, because I was surprised he even came back for this season. Danny Briere is the GM, and I don't know. We think we know Danny. I guess maybe I didn't as much as I did, because I did not think that Danny Briere would be the type of person that would want John Tortorella as his head coach. But there's other factors. There's ownership, right, that would have a say in something like that, and they kept him around. Well, if I was right about Briere a year ago, he'd like to have a different style of coach. Well, this would be his opportunity. No better opportunity than the end of this season if they miss the playoffs. Not just that you missed the playoffs, but you were in a spot all year. You benched the captain. You caused the group to lose confidence or to start to hate you. And that's what caused you to miss the playoffs. You got to go. So if he becomes available, and I think there's a very good chance that he does, you had Jeff Merrick and Greg Wyshynski earlier in the week on Sportsnet talking about Tortorella for the Sabres. And it's not an idea that's new. We've talked about him before. In the 4.5 years I've been doing this show, maybe it's a yearly occurrence that we spend one segment on, hey, what about Torts? Just because he's so unique now to the league. So if that's your cup of tea, if you want a guy like that, well, he's your guy, because there's not many left. Even when we talk about Lindy, if you think Granato is the most player-friendly coach in the world and isn't hard on the players when he needs to be, and you think Tortorella is the opposite, he's hard on the players maybe to a fault, like Lindy is somewhere in the middle. And I think a lot of those veteran coaches now are somewhere in the middle. I don't know, there is another guy like Tortorella, except for Gerard Gallant, but Gallant is not currently employed, so he kind of fits the same description. But what about Tortorella? Do fans have a want for that? There would be a segment, I think, that would think, these baby players, and they are, the youngest team in the league. They need someone to whip a structure into them, whip them into shape, know what it takes to win, be pros, and that's going to be John Tortorella. He's not going to let them off the hook, that type of mindset. And that's all good in theory. This is why I like the idea of something in between Granato and Tortorella. And that's why I like the Lindy idea, is I think you got to know how to play the game. You got to know when to pick your spots with stuff like that. You can't have what's happening in Philadelphia right now, where you can't have a coach that could get a team turned against them like this. And that happens everywhere Tortorella goes. He always loses the locker room. He always loses the message gets stale. Often you'll hear with him. And that's why he's been on 4 different organizations in the last 10 years. It happens to him. So there's a time span there. So I don't know. The other part of Tortorella is he gets results immediately everywhere he goes. Again, it runs its course eventually. But do Sabre fans care about that? Don't we just want one good? Can we just start with one good year and then we'll figure it out after that? And Tortorella, everywhere but Vancouver. He had 1 year in Vancouver where it didn't go so well. But you look at, since Tampa, is so long ago, I don't even want to bring it up. It's 25 years ago. But he gets to the Rangers in 2008, and they make the playoffs the first season that he's there. He came in middle of that season. Then he goes to Vancouver. That's the one example of where it didn't necessarily work right away. Then he goes to Columbus, and Columbus, it takes them 1 year. And in year 2, he makes the playoffs. Then he goes to Philadelphia. Again, missed it in year 1, but he made it in year 2. He makes the playoffs at least on 4 of the 5 teams that he's been. And Vancouver only got 1 year, so who's to say he wouldn't have made it in year 2? That's the argument for Tortorella. The guy gets results, and if you want a coach like that, then he's your man. I am not in, though. I don't mind elements of the Tortorella experience, but it's got to be more conservative than what he's all about. I don't think there's a place for him anymore in the NHL. It's wild to me that he continues to get jobs. But again, part of the reason why he continues to get jobs is he does find a way to reach the playoffs. But it's not like he wins big. Last time he won big, he went to the finals once in his last 20 years of coaching. So he'll make the playoffs, but if you want a winner in the last 20 years, he's got one real deep playoff run, and that's it. So not to say Lindy is necessarily more qualified on that front, because, it's been a long time for him with a deep playoff run as well. So I don't know. Tortorella's not my cup of tea at all, and I think it's kind of amazing that he continues to get work. 65 years old now. I think it's probably over for him. And the way he's acting as of late, he is. You could tell he's upset. He's got a cast on his right hand, by the way. I don't know what that's from. Now, I just might be ignorant on this front, and maybe it's out there and everyone knows why he has a cast. But I was watching his press conference the other day while he was losing it, or was just mad. And through my head the whole time, like, did he get that cast because he punched a hole in a wall or something, like angry at the players? Again, maybe there's a real reason why that happened, but the dude's a crazy person. And it would not surprise me at all if he put his hand through a wall or a chalkboard or something and broke it. So you'll see him on the bench tonight. Maybe it'll be under the suit. He's got a cast on. Let me know what you think. I am always interested to see what faction, what size of the fans are into this as an idea every time it comes up, because I do think it's starting to get, a little lower and lower, but there's still some out there that think it's not a bad idea. Sabres and Flyers Friday night at 7:00. We'll talk more about Ivan Fedotov, the new goaltender of the Flyers, who I think is going to be their goalie for a long time. I'll explain when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience with the formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has got everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance. You got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and plenty more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. I'll have my parlay. We're due. We're going to hit it tonight. I can feel it. The Sabres and the Flyers, their final meeting of the season, of course, the second to last home game of the year. You got the hot dog of the day tonight. I don't know what they're going to do for that. They did, cheesesteak vibe earlier in the year. Maybe they try something different. You could try something Rocky themed, or I don't know what else Philadelphia is known for food-wise. But anyways, Sabres and Flyers, 7:00 at KeyBank Center. And it'll be Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen in between the pipes for Buffalo. New guy for Philly. You can't miss him. Ivan Fedotov, a 6'8" Russian Godzilla, is going to be standing between the pipes for the Flyers tonight. It will be hard to miss him. He is huge. Not Russian. He's from Finland. He's played in Russia. Actually, scratch that. Born in Finland. His nationality is Russian. You do what you want with that. He plays for Team Russia, was born in Finland. But Fedotov will be between the pipes for his first NHL start tonight against the Sabres. Here is why he's a guy you're going to want to keep an eye on in the future. One, he has been a star goalie in the KHL overseas for a good 4, 5, 6 years now. He finally decided he wanted to try the NHL, came over in the middle of this season, and ended up on the Flyers because they drafted him 9 years ago. He was a 7th-round pick 9 years ago by the Flyers, but because of the way the NHL system works, you just hold his rights until he could have waited 10 more years, and the Flyers still would have held his rights. So they signed him, entry-level contract. He is 27. That means he'll be a free agent, though, at the end of the year, a UFA. So for now, he's the best they got. And maybe if they make the playoffs, he would start game 1 for them in whatever series they're in. That would be my prediction. So we'll see how good he is at the NHL level. It could go any which way, right? He could be horrible. He could be incredible. He could be like the best goalie in the league. I don't know. The size is so interesting. I don't have this off the top of my head. Maybe it's out there. My guess is he's the biggest goalie in hockey at 6'8", 215. I'd be surprised. I'm trying to think of someone off the top of my head that would be bigger than that. I think he's got to be the biggest goalie in hockey. A .914 save percentage this year in the KHL. He had good numbers in the playoffs as well. Last year, I don't know if they won it. I know he played 22 games in their playoffs last year in the KHL, and he had a .937 save percentage and went 16-6. If I'm doing math, 4 times 4 is 16, so I'm guessing he won the championship last year. This guy is talented. Again, We'll see. Could go any which way. My guess, though, is he's going to be pretty good. And the Flyers believe that because there's already reports out there that Danny Briere, Flyers GM, is already working on a long-term extension with Fedotov. He is going in. This is going to be my goalie of the future. And they kind of have to do something because Carter Hart, again, his legal situation, if it's found to be true, that he should go to jail. I don't know if he will, but he absolutely should go to jail if he's found guilty in Ontario. So he's gone. This is the guy for Philadelphia going forward. Who knows, though? Maybe they don't get it done, and maybe he hits free agency this summer, and then he becomes a really interesting character around the league for what to do with for a contract. So he'll play tonight. We'll see what we get. No idea, but it'll be a reason to be interested in the game itself, is what the Sabres can do to this guy. Speaking of the Sabres and tonight's game, Jordan Greenway will not play. He's been dealing with some nagging injury stuff, so he will be out of the lineup, which means Lucas Rousek continues to play. And at last check, he was on a line with Peyton Krebs and Jeff Skinner. I'd imagine that's going to stay the same for tonight's game, while Zach Benson remains in the top six. One thing I want to point out, I'll talk more about this on a future episode. Bo Byram is still with Henry Jokiharju for today's practice. That's been one of the worst pairings in hockey since they were put together, really, of the year. They are so bad together, both in the offensive zone and in their own end, especially in their own end. Byram started hot when he was playing with Dahlin. Something about it. I don't know if it's Byram. I don't know if it's just the way the two play. I'm going to be watching it closer tonight to try to see what's going wrong there, because I haven't noticed anything yet, but those two have some horrible advanced numbers together, and maybe you've been able to notice how bad they've been. So we'll see what they look like. Lukin in net against Fedotov, our parlay of the day over at FanDuel Sportsbook. We are due. We are going to hit it tonight. I'm feeling confident. Tonight, I'm going to go with Sabres money line. The Sabres are favored in this game, minus 120. That's going to be leg number one of this 3-leg parlay. Leg number two, why not keep it hot, right? Let's jump on the JJ Peterka train. He is still on the top line. At least Line Rushes this morning had that. So with Thompson and Tuck playing so well with Peterka, I am going to go with JJ. He has, in his last 5 games, actually in his last 6 games, he has 7 goals. So he's over a goal per game since he's been on this line, and he has plus money to score tonight, plus 190. And then, this seems to happen in every Sabre game, and the odds don't represent it, so we got to go to yes on a goal in the first 10 minutes of action. This happened even last game. Like, they gave one up to Washington. The Sabres have given up goals early all year. They've had a couple of their own, too. I'm going to throw in, and I'm going 10 minutes, not 5. So a goal to be scored in the first 10 minutes of the game. JJ Peterka, anytime goal score. And I'm going to go Sabres to cover or to win the game outright on the money line. Philadelphia is playing so bad right now that I like the Sabres' chances a lot in this game, especially coming off an extra day of rest here. Plus 541. All that together is plus 541. So 10 to win 54, 100 to win 541 if you're interested. That's going to do it for us tonight here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you're looking to shoot us some texts during the game, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres, and we will hopefully talk to you after a Sabres win against the Flyers. We'll be back on Monday. Thanks for listening this week to Locked On Sabres. We will talk to you next week, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.